Of the millions of Americans who call the United States the greatest country in the world, far fewer of them would say that American children are the best educated in the world. As president, how would you go about making sure that our children are better educated here than in any other country in the world? Mr. Barnett.
I would remove the secularized agenda. I'd take out the emphasis on social issues. We don't need it there. We need to go back to the basics: math, science, being able to solve problems. That's something that we don't teach anymore. Heck, we're removing cursive handwriting. How much more basic can you get than that? Our children don't do math in their heads or on paper anymore. It's on a calculator or on a computer. There's no wonder why we cannot solve problems today. Our youth seem to be, quote unquote, dumbed down. And it's by design. It's not an accident. We're teaching them what we want them to know. And they're not getting what they need to know. Most of the children I know, and I make fun of them sometimes, I'll poke fun and jest at them, they can't communicate person to person. They can only talk over a computer, chat, IM, text. That's all they do. I see them on MySpace, on I'm forgetting the name of the other social media site, Facebook. That's where they stay. They live their life there. There's no reality for them anymore. We've got to get back to a real conversation. We have to teach them real problem-solving skills. And we have to get back to the basics.
Mr. Cross.
Education is the cornerstone of our society and of our future. What it is now, the way it is now, is that poor people, middle-class people, lower middle and even middle, look, many of their kids look and say, it's hopeless. I'm never going to go to college anyway. We're not going to have the money. It costs so much money. And I'm not smart enough to get a scholarship like the top ones. So what happens is they drop out, they get into drugs, they go to jail at a big cost to society. It's been proven, and I don't remember the guy's name who's done this, but he went into Harlem and got a classroom and said, if you all do well, I'll pay your cost to college. And they all did well and they went to college, and it's still going on now. People will, with incentive, apply themselves if they think there's hope. And in my plan, I provide $200 per credit hour for any student that gets into college. And now that would be 200 a credit hour at 15 credits is $6,000 a year. That would cover almost all the cost of of a community college and greatly support other colleges. Now, the point is that if you give people hope and they know they've got somewhere to go, the kids will try harder, the parents will push them to try harder, and you'll have better results. But yes, it costs money, but you take the money from the corporate America only pays $181 billion in taxes, so you bring them up to $400 billion to pay for the show. But the point is, you've got to give people an incentive to go forward. And just like the GI Bill, when the soldiers got back from World War II, we had the GI Bill. A lot of soldiers took it, and we went in the 50s and 60s. We had high growth and a stimulated economy. We need to look to ourselves now to do that, to promote education.
Mr. Chlapowski.
When I look at what the school teachers today have to put up with in the schoolroom, and no student left behind kind of mentality, I look at this as the worst social experiment ever. And I think that it addressed parents in denial and children that really could benefit from being in groups where they are segregated according to capability will greatly incentivize people to go learn and the students to go learn. And I look back at discipline in schools and looking at the Chinese, and they're the top performers, and you visit China and you see that the first week of school they're meeting with the police so that they know what the laws are in this regard. The next week, they're meeting with the military. But one thing they do have in their schools is discipline. We used to have discipline in our schools. And so back to the bell curve, back to vocational school, and separating people who need hands-on from those who are mentally capable.
1 minute follow-up, Mr. Barnett.
I'll say this, you said something about giving $200 per credit hour to children. I think that's a huge financial burden that we're not going to be able to sustain. But I also believe that we have to give parents back the ability to be parents. That's where it starts. Respecting your parents, respecting authority figures. That's why the teachers are dealing with what they're dealing with in school today. We don't have children that pay attention anymore. They can do whatever they like, and there's really no repercussion. You're right. That is a huge issue. The next thing is we have to hold teachers accountable. We need to make it actually a performance-based position, which we don't have right now. You get those students through, you get those students to learn, then we'll give you a pay raise. Then we'll work more. But we can't just say, well, the burden rests elsewhere. We've got to make it performance-based, just like any other segment of our economy.
Mr. Cross.
It's true, my plan would be expensive. It would cost about $120 billion a year. It's a lot of money. And it would be brought up from changing corporate taxation from the income tax to a simple 4% revenue tax. And then they could spend their money on expenses how they want, if they want to go to a Y, instead of cutting their income by that. But the point is, we get the taxes and we spend the money because it's money well spent. And giving them incentive, you get results by people wanting to do something. The teachers right now have so many rules, so many people getting into the business of teaching that they don't barely teach civics, they barely teach history. They're focusing on reading and arithmetic, and they got to teach each child and put in records on each one. We've meddled with teaching to the point that they barely can teach anymore. The point is they were able to teach, and they could teach if they had adequate funding and pay.
Mr. Chlapowski.
I agree with Mr. Cross. We need to free the teacher in many regards. One is in the discipline end. The other one is, as he mentioned, in the paperwork end, where we waste all of their time tracking the least capable instead of helping the most capable. And so it's just inverted. And I've seen these self-learning courses proposed, or self-paced courses. And if you always slow everybody to the slowest student, you're never going to achieve. We spend more money than anyone. We have the lowest student ratio. And you look at, we're 16th in math and 26th in science out of 31 countries. It's a failure. We have to change.